My name is Harper Cole. I'm 32, and this is the story of how my one-year marriage went from perfect couple to a full-blown car fire without me ever raising my voice. My best friend would probably roll his eyes and tell me that sounds dramatic if he heard me say it. But I work around engines all day. I know exactly what it looks like when something seems fine on the surface while it's slowly burning underneath. Hey Reddit, I guess. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. Grab your popcorn. You're going to need it. On paper, my life was boring in all the right ways. I own a mid-size auto shop. I still turn wrenches with my guys, even though I'm also the one doing payroll, scheduling, and all the paperwork that likes to multiply at 2 a.m. My husband, Michael, has the kind of job my mother calls respectable, and I call too many emails and not enough sunlight. We'd been married for a year. The first few months were smooth, predictable, and just a little too perfect. We worked, came home, argued about what to order, watched whatever show neither of us hated, and made up over takeout on the couch. The kind of normal that makes you think, okay, maybe this is what happily ever after looks like, slightly tired and smelling like reheated noodles. If you had asked me back then, I would have said we were boringly happy, and I meant it as a compliment. The first weird signs didn't crash through the door. They slid in quietly. Michael started doing this subtle little thing where he'd leave his phone face down every single time it buzzed. Not just in public but at home. Kitchen table, coffee table, nightstand always face down. Screen hidden like it was shy. I noticed. I always notice. But I'm not the jealous, phone-grabbing, password-demanding type. That's never been my style. I notice, I log it, I move on. At least that's what I told myself. Then he started zoning out during meals. I'd be talking about a nightmare customer at the shop or something dumb Mark said while we were wrestling with a seized bolt, and Michael would just stare past me. Fork frozen halfway to his mouth. Eyes somewhere on the wall behind my head like his brain hit a loading screen. You okay? I asked the first time, wiping grease off my hands and nudging his ankle under the table. Huh. He blinked, came back to himself, forced a smile. Yeah, sorry, just tired. Thing is, tired people don't suddenly become allergic to eye contact. It didn't happen just once. Kept happening. At breakfast, at dinner, while we were folding laundry. He'd suddenly go quiet, his hands moving on autopilot while his mind clearly went somewhere else. Then came the modern phase, I guess. He started dropping random topics into the most mundane moments, like he was sneaking ingredients into a recipe, and hoping I wouldn't taste them. One night we were folding towels in the living room. Netflix droned in the background. Out of nowhere, he said, "You know, a lot of couples are exploring more open dynamics now." I looked up from the towel I was fighting with. Open how? Like windows. He smirked, didn't quite meet my eyes. No, like relationships. Not being so possessive. I said and went back to folding. Logged, noted, filed away. Another time I was half asleep scrolling through my phone, and he slid into my DMs from 3 feet away on the couch with a reel about emotional freedom between married people. One of those heavily edited videos where two very pretty, very smug people talk about how jealousy is just a social construct. I watched it, blinked slowly and set my phone down. No comment, he asked. Yeah, I said. I have several. None of them are polite. He laughed a little too loudly and changed the subject. Once you notice a shift, you can't unsee it. We were watching some cheesy romance movie. The kind where the couple fixes 5 years of trauma in 2 hours in one rainstorm. We're halfway through and out of nowhere he asks, "What do you think about polygamy?" I honestly thought he was joking. I laughed. He wasn't laughing. His eyes stayed glued to the TV like he was testing my reaction without really looking at me. Not my thing, I said slowly. Why? He shrugged, all casual. Just asking. I read this article about how humans aren't meant to be monogamous. Cool, I said, leaning back. Then go be human somewhere else because this one's married. He let out this awkward little laugh and dropped it for about 5 minutes. After that, the comments kept slipping into normal conversations like lint you couldn't quite pick off. Wouldn't it be easier if relationships weren't so possessive? I think people should experience life fully, not limit themselves. I wouldn't have looked twice at those sentences on a motivational poster. Coming out of my husband's mouth while his phone buzzed face down on the table, they felt different. It wasn't curiosity. It was rehearsal. The stranger part. It wasn't like anything was wrong with our marriage. We weren't screaming at each other. We weren't sleeping in separate rooms. We weren't even in some long dry spell. We were fine. Boring. Comfortable. And that's what bothered me. You don't try to remodel a house that isn't cracking, unless you're planning to move someone else in. The real turning point came one morning over pancakes. I was half awake, hair in a messy bun, still wearing yesterday's shop t-shirt. He was scrolling through his phone, the blue glow lighting up his face. Without even looking up, he said, "Do you think a relationship with 3 people could actually work?" I stared at him like he just asked if I wanted to invest in a pyramid scheme. "No," I said. "And before you ask, I'm not interested." He blinked, smiled like he didn't mean it. "Just curious." Curious is how people end up on fire, I muttered, grabbing my coffee and heading out the door. That should have been the moment I snapped. The big dramatic fight, the slammed doors and broken plates. That's what you'd expect in a messy story. But I don't snap. I calculate. So I went to work. I tightened bolts, diagnosed engine noises, and let my brain quietly stack little red flags into a pattern. Every time he said the word freedom, I mentally ticked it off like I was counting laps. By the end of that week, I'd heard it 9 times. Freedom from jealousy, freedom from ownership, freedom to explore, freedom to experience life fully. Here's the thing though. When someone starts hinting about changing the rules of the game, it's never really about the rules. It's about them wanting a new player. I didn't have proof yet. No texts, no lipstick on collars, no late night calls I could point to and say, aha, just a gut feeling that wouldn't shut up. But I knew my husband, or at least I thought I did. Whatever he was working up the courage to say out loud, it wasn't going to be something I liked. And I had no idea that the first time he finally said it, he'd be sitting right across from his parents, smiling like he was announcing a promotion. That confrontation came faster than I expected. It was a Tuesday, which is important because absolutely nothing interesting ever happens on a Tuesday until it does. I came home smelling like motor oil and victory after wrestling with a stubborn transmission all afternoon. I kicked off my boots by the door and followed the sound of a man's voice from the living room. Michael was on the couch, eyes glued to the TV, watching some podcast about breaking social norms. You know the type. One guy with a microphone, a beard, and way too much confidence saying things like, monogamy is a construct, and jealousy is just an emotional habit you can unlearn. I stood behind the couch for a moment listening. If you really love someone, the host said, you set them free. Restriction is fear. Openness is love. I grabbed the remote off the armrest, clicked pause, and leaned on the back of the couch. Let me guess, I said. This guy's divorced. Michael sighed and rolled his eyes. Harper? Seriously? Yeah, seriously. I'm just wondering how many failed relationships it takes before you get a podcast. He sat up a little, tension creeping into his shoulders. You're so defensive. I just got home from work and walked into TED Talk. Poly Edition. I said. Forgive me if I'm not clapping. I was just watching something, he snapped. You don't have to turn it into an attack. I raised an eyebrow. You were watching a guy explain why monogamy is overrated while your phone is face down next to you. Forgive me if my brain connects a few dots. He grabbed the remote back, set it down a little too hard. This is exactly what I mean, Harper. You're closed off sometimes. You know that. Closed off. I repeated. No, I just don't feel the need to open the door for every dumb trend that knocks. His jaw tightened. He looked away. You never want to talk about this stuff, about how relationships evolve, about other possibilities. Because I don't care about other possibilities, I said calmly. I care about my marriage. This one. The one I'm already in. He muttered something under his breath and grabbed his phone. That night, for the first time, he left it charging face up on his pillow. Screen dark. No notifications. It almost would have been reassuring if it hadn't felt like a performance. After that, everything turned into a slow sales campaign. He started sending me educational material like he'd suddenly enrolled as my life coach. Articles with titles like Why Open Relationships Actually Strengthen Marriages, The Science Behind Polyamory, Jealousy is Just a Program You Can Rewrite. First, I didn't even click them. I'd open my messages, see the link, see the preview text, and close it. Did you read it? He'd ask, watching me out of the corner of his eye. Nope, I'd answer, not looking up. Then he upgraded from articles to videos. Little clips of couples sitting on couches with throw pillows behind them, talking about emotional liberation and unlearning ownership. One of them said, "If you truly love someone, you set them free." I muttered, "If you truly love someone, you don't need subtitles to justify cheating." Michael heard that one. He didn't like it. He didn't argue though. That was the unnerving part. He just absorbed it, filed it away, and came back with something a little more polished the next time. Every morning there was something new. A reel, a podcast clip, a quote, always about the same theme. Freedom, openness, exploration. Living with him started to feel like being stuck inside a PowerPoint presentation on why you should totally let your husband sleep with other people. It went on for about 2 weeks. He was testing, pushing, watching, trying to figure out how far he could go before I snapped. Problem for him was I still wasn't snapping. I was calculating. I began mentally tracking how often this theme came up. How often he used the word freedom. How often he said experience life. With that dreamy little look that made me want to throw a wrench at the wall. By the end of that second week, I wasn't even pretending it was random. One night, I was sitting on the couch with a bowl of leftover pasta in my lap, half watching a game on TV. My body was tired, but my brain was blissfully blank. The kind of quiet you earn after a long day. Michael walked in from the kitchen, wiped his hands on a dish towel, and stood there with that "we need to talk" energy. Immediate bad sign. He hovered for a second, then sat down at the other end of the couch, facing me instead of the TV. "Harper," he said, fidgeting with his phone, "I think we should talk about something important." I didn't look away from the screen. "Let me guess. We're moving to a commune." He exhaled sharply. "Can you be serious for 5 minutes?" "I rebuild engines for a living," I said. "I'm serious all day. This is my unserious time." He pressed his lips together, clearly annoyed I wasn't giving him the dramatic stage he wanted. "I just think," he started carefully, "that we should try something more open." I paused the game and finally turned to look at him. "Define open." "Just not so exclusive for a while," he said like he was offering me a free trial subscription. "You know, experience life without pressure. Still love each other. Still committed emotionally, but we don't have to be so physically committed." "Not exactly." He smiled like I finally understood. "Exactly. See, you get it." I leaned back into the couch, stared at him for a long second, and then shook my head. "Yeah. No," I said. His smile faltered. "You're not even going to think about it?" "No. Harper. Come on. You're jumping to conclusions. This doesn't have to be a bad thing." "Oh, I'm sure it's a fantastic thing for you," I said. "You get all the fun of being single without any of the inconvenience of losing your wife." His eyes narrowed. "You're being dramatic. And you're being dishonest," I replied. "At least be brave enough to say what this really is. You don't want freedom. You want permission." "That's not fair," he shot back. "You don't even want to have a conversation about evolving our relationship." "If you want evolution, go read Darwin," I said calmly. "This is a marriage. 2 people. Not a circus audition." That one landed. He went quiet for a moment, jaw clenching, eyes flicking away. "You're so close-minded sometimes," he muttered. "You never grow. You never." "I grew," I said. "I married you. That was me taking a risk. That was me choosing you. And now you're sitting here on my couch trying to sell me a lifestyle that conveniently lets you flirt, sleep around, and call it enlightenment." He stared at me, breathing a little harder now. "You don't understand how relationships can evolve. You just want everything to stay the same forever." "No," I said. "I just don't want to wake up one day and realize I co-signed my own humiliation." He winced like the word hit harder than I meant it to. Good. I'm not saying I don't love you, he said, softening his voice, reaching for my hand. I just think we should explore together. I pulled my hand back before he could touch it. Now hold on, Dora the Explorer, I said. You don't explore when you're married. You build. If you want to go sightseeing, you can do it single. His face went pale. You'd end our marriage over this? He asked. Just for wanting to talk about it? Yes, I said, calm and clear. I would rather be alone than share. He stared at me, stunned, like he genuinely didn't expect an answer that firm. Okay, he said after a few seconds, forcing a little laugh. Okay, that came out wrong. I didn't mean we had to do anything. I just wanted to open a conversation. You did, I said. You opened it. I closed it. He swallowed, eyes suddenly shiny. Just forget I said anything. I'm sorry. I won't bring it up again. Good, I answered, unpausing the game. Because I meant what I said. For the next few weeks, everything went back to normal. He cooked dinner more, texted me cute memes during the day, kissed my forehead when he thought I was half asleep. The word open vanished from his vocabulary. If I were a different kind of woman, I might have believed him. But once you see the crack in a wall, you can't stop checking it. He stopped sending me articles, but he didn't stop scrolling them. I'd walk past and catch phrases on his screen. Non-monogamy, deconstructing jealousy, ethical exploration. He thought he was subtle. He wasn't. Still, we didn't fight. We weren't icy. We weren't distant. We were polite, functional, suspended, like two people living in the same house, standing on opposite sides of a decision neither of us wanted to name out loud. What I didn't know then was that he was just waiting for a stage big enough to make his next move. Not our living room, not our kitchen table. His parents' dining room with me sitting right there. Michael's parents, Carol and Dennis, are the kind of people who set a dinner table like they're expecting a magazine photographer to crawl out of the oven at any moment. Cloth napkins, centerpiece, perfect lighting. The whole Martha Stewart starter pack. Normally, dinners at their house were harmless. Small talk, mild gossip, too much wine, and Carol insisting we take leftovers even if we said no. Nothing dramatic. But that night was the beginning of the end. And Michael knew exactly what he was doing when he sat down across from me, shoulders straight, eyes too bright. We arrived a little after 6. Carol hugged me like she always did, warm and soft, smelling like rosemary and hand lotion. Harp, sweetheart, look at you, she said. You look exhausted. You're working too hard. I smiled. Long week at the shop. Michael was behind me, already drifting toward the dining room, pretending to admire the table while checking his reflection in the glass cabinet. Dennis gave me a firm nod when he saw me. Harper, he said. Good to see you. Help yourself to a drink. I did. Whiskey, small pour. I should have taken the whole bottle. Dinner started normally enough. Carol talked about her coworker's awful boyfriend. Dennis talked about a newspaper article he read. Michael asked if I'd told them about the new hire at the shop. I hadn't. He answered his own question anyway. It was fine. Normal. Comfortable. Until Carol, cutting the roast chicken, glanced between us and said, So, how are you two doing? 1 year already. Time flies. I smiled, swallowing a piece of potato. We're doing good. Busy but good. Michael didn't let me finish chewing. He set down his fork, looked directly at his parents, not at me, and said, Actually, we've been talking about opening our marriage. Silence. Forks froze. Dennis blinked once, slowly, like his brain needed a reboot. Carol's hand hovered midair over the serving dish. Eyes wide, mouth slightly open. I swear even the chicken stopped steaming. I stared at Michael, not with shock. I wasn't shocked, not really. But with that slow sinking clarity you feel when everything you suspected finally clicks into place. He kept going. You know, he said casually, just to experience new things. Emotional growth. Freedom. Exploration. He said the word freedom, like it was the punchline to a joke only he found funny. Carol set the dish down. Michael, she said sharply. What on earth? It's something we're considering, he continued, cutting her off. We've been discussing it for a while. Discussing as in plural. As in both of us. That was the moment my heartbeat slowed to a steady, cold rhythm. Because he wasn't just rewriting our marriage. He was rewriting me. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell or curse or throw my napkin across the table like some dramatic movie wife. I simply set down my fork, wiped my mouth with my napkin, and placed it neatly beside my plate. Then I looked at Michael, finally forcing him to meet my eyes. "Oh," I said softly. "I guess that's your announcement, not mine." He blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" I pushed my chair back calmly. "I mean," I said, standing up, "you can have your open relationship, Michael, and I'll have my single life." Carol gasped. Dennis exhaled through his nose like he'd been holding his breath for a full minute. Michael laughed nervously. "Harper, come on." "They don't—" "Carol," I interrupted gently. "Dinner was wonderful." "Thank you." I turned to Dennis. "Good seeing you." And I walked out. No yelling, no drama, no explanation. Just done. Behind me, I heard Michael's voice rising. "Harper, seriously, we're not doing this right now. Can you stop being?" But his voice faded as the front door closed behind me. Calm in the chaos, I refused to stand next to another moment. I walked to the car, slow, controlled. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't stutter. My heels didn't click any faster on the pavement. Inside the truck, I didn't turn the engine on right away. I just sat there in the quiet, staring at my own reflection in the windshield. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt finished. He wanted freedom. He got it. I drove aimlessly for a while, streetlights flickering past like Morse code. My phone buzzed nonstop. Michael calling, texting, calling again. I turned it face down on the passenger seat and let it ring out. He could text, he could call, he could send a carrier pigeon. I was done reading his fantasies dressed as logic. About 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Different ringtone, different name. "Dennis." I hesitated, then answered. "Harper," he said quietly. "I heard what happened tonight." I exhaled slowly. "Yeah." "I'm ashamed of him," Dennis said. "I don't know what's gotten into that boy." "I do," I murmured. "And it wasn't just tonight. This has been brewing." He sighed heavily. "Carol and she's been talking strange lately, saying things we couldn't make sense of. I thought it was just online influence. Not this." "His face came with brochures," I said dryly. Dennis snorted. Actually snorted. "Well, for what it's worth, I think you handled it right. You didn't yell. You didn't make a scene. You just walked away. There's strength in that." I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. I tried being patient. I tried listening. But there's only so much you can do when someone is addicted to bad ideas. There was a pause. "Do what you need to do," Dennis said firmly. "Don't feel guilty for protecting yourself." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "Thank you." We hung up. And for the first time that night, I felt understood. By the time I got home, it was almost 11 o'clock. The house was dark, quiet, but I didn't go inside. Not yet. I sat in the driver's seat, unlocked my phone, scrolled to my contacts, and tapped a number I never thought I'd use. My lawyer answered, sounding half asleep. "Harper, everything okay?" "Not really," I said. Then I looked at the dark silhouette of the house I used to call home. "I need to start a divorce." He inhaled sharply but didn't question me. "Come in tomorrow. We'll begin the paperwork." "Thank you." I hung up, shut off the engine, and finally went inside. Michael was on the couch, lights dim, eyes red, face twisted into that fake, fragile expression he always used when he wanted sympathy without earning it. "You just walked out," he said, voice cracking. "In front of my parents." "Yeah," I said flatly. "And I plan to make it permanent." He opened his mouth to argue, to manipulate, to spin. But I walked past him, grabbed a blanket, threw it on the couch, and lay down. No yelling, no conversation, no second chances. Just peace. Cold, quiet peace. The next morning, when I checked our bedroom, his side of the bed was messy. The air smelled like his cologne and desperation. He tried to sleep, tried to act normal, tried to pretend nothing was happening. I grabbed coffee, ignored his texts, and left for my lawyer's office. By noon, the first set of divorce papers was signed. Under reason, I told my lawyer to write one word: delusion. He laughed. I didn't. That night, I sat in my truck in a grocery store parking lot eating takeout, wondering how someone could share your home, your table, your life, and still be a complete stranger. That was when my phone buzzed again. A new message. Not from Michael. From Liam, his best friend. Hey, I heard what happened at dinner. Are you okay? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back. I'm fine. You heard quick. And that message, small as it was, would be the first domino in everything that came next. Liam wasn't the kind of man who texted people impulsively. He was steady, practical, the kind of guy who thought twice before hitting send on anything. So for him to reach out, especially about this, meant something. Before I could overthink it, another message came through. Carol was shaken. Dennis called me. Michael's been off for a while. Thought you should know. That line hit differently. Not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed the thing I hadn't let myself say out loud. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't curiosity. This was a pattern. I texted back. Thanks for checking in. Liam replied almost instantly. If you need someone to talk to, someone who won't use buzzwords, dinner's on me. Just food. Just sanity. I stared at the message, and for the first time in days, I felt something that wasn't anger or numbness. Relief. A sane voice. A neutral pair of ears. Someone who'd known Michael long enough to smell the smoke even before the fire. Sure. Pick the place. He chose a small diner near the lake. One of those places with ugly booths, decent coffee, and waitresses who call you hun, whether you're 14 or 60. Liam was already there when I walked in, sitting by the window with a glass of water and that familiar, steady expression. No pity, no shock, just honesty waiting to happen. He stood when I approached. Harper. Hey. I slid into the booth. Thanks for meeting me. Of course, he sat. Rough week. Rough year, I corrected. He cracked a small smile. Fair enough. A waitress came by. I ordered fries and a soda. Liam got coffee black. For a full minute, neither of us spoke. Not awkward silence. Just the kind where two people are gearing up for a heavy conversation. Finally, Liam sighed and rubbed his jaw. I don't know where to start. Start anywhere, I said. The bar's so low, it's underground. He huffed a quiet laugh. Okay, he said. Then I'll start with this. Michael has been acting strange for months. Talking in circles, rambling about breaking norms and emotional liberation and how jealousy is just fear. First, I thought he was trying to sound deep. Then I realized he was trying to justify something. My stomach tightened, but I didn't flinch. I just nodded. Makes sense. You noticed too then. I noticed everything. Liam drummed his fingers on the table. He stopped talking to me normally. Everything turned into a philosophy lecture. He kept saying you were closed off and didn't want to evolve with him. Ah yes, I said. His favorite script. Liam shook his head. I asked him what that meant. He wouldn't answer. Of course he wouldn't. Because answering would require honesty, and honesty would require admitting there was another woman, or at least another option, already floating around in his head. I didn't say that yet. Instead I said, he ambushed me at his parents' dinner table. Liam winced. I heard. Announced we were exploring an open marriage, I said flatly. Plural. As in we. That's... He stopped himself, searching for a word that wasn't disrespectful. I found it for him. Cowardly. Yes. The relief on his face told me he'd wanted to say that for months. The waitress dropped off our drinks, smiled politely, and left. Liam waited until she was out of earshot. Harper, he said gently. I'm really sorry. Don't be. I'm divorcing him. He nodded slowly, as if he'd expected it. Good. Honestly good. You deserve better than whatever identity crisis he's calling freedom. I snorted. You're the first person to say that to my face. Because it's obvious, Liam said simply. You've always been the grounded one. The one who thinks. The one who works hard. Michael's. He exhaled. He's looking for chaos he can dress up as philosophy. That was the moment something inside me exhaled. Something tight and bitter that I'd been holding on to without realizing. Thank you, I said quietly. Liam nodded again, eyes steady. Someone had to say it. We talked for an hour. Not about Michael, not really. About work, stupid customers, car trouble he was having. Random stories, normal things. Things that reminded me who I was outside of being someone's wife. When dinner was done, he walked me to my truck. Not close, not suggestive, just respectful distance. Harper, he said, stopping beside me. If you need anything, support, help moving out, someone to talk to, I'm here. I appreciate that, I said. Really? And he hesitated. I know this isn't my place, but don't let him twist this. You're not the problem. He is. I know. And this time I really meant it. I got in my truck. He stepped back. I drove away feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. Michael wanted freedom. He was about to get it, but not in the way he imagined. The next morning, Michael was waiting in the kitchen when I woke up. He looked exhausted. Dark circles, messy hair. A half-burnt slice of toast on a plate, like he tried to play domestic husband and failed. You didn't come home last night, he said softly. I did, I answered. After you fell asleep. He nodded, swallowing hard. We need to talk. No, I said, pouring myself coffee. We don't. I already talked to my lawyer. His eyes widened. Harper, seriously? Divorce over one conversation. I didn't react. I sipped my coffee. It wasn't one conversation. He ran a shaky hand through his hair. I was just trying to help us grow. No, I said. You were trying to pre-justify something. He froze. For the first time since this started, he didn't have a prepared answer. And that was all the confirmation I needed. That afternoon my phone buzzed again. Michael, can we please talk? Just 5 minutes. You misunderstood me. Please. I put the phone down. 20 minutes later. I can explain everything. Then you're overreacting. Then. I didn't mean any of it the way it sounded. The more he texted, the less I felt anything at all. The shift was complete. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was done. And then the message that changed everything. I was back at the shop when my phone buzzed again. Not Michael. Liam. We need to talk in person. It's important. My heart didn't drop. It didn't race. It just steadied. Because deep down I already knew what he was going to say. The truth about Diana and the real reason Michael wanted freedom. I met Liam that evening at a quiet Italian place off the highway. The kind with dim lighting, too many plants, and soft music playing like it was afraid to interrupt anyone. When I walked in, Liam was already at a corner booth. Elbows on the table. Hands clasped, expression tight. Not angry, not nervous, burdened. He stood when I approached. Harper. Liam. I slid into the seat across from him. You said it was important. It is. He didn't sit. He took a slow breath, lowered his voice, and leaned in. And I'm not saying this lightly. I debated all day whether to tell you. I folded my hands, bracing myself. Tell me what? He finally sat down. Michael's been involved with someone from his work. There it was. The sentence I'd been waiting to hear for weeks, maybe months. My stomach didn't drop. My throat didn't close. My pulse didn't spike. If anything, my body relaxed, like a puzzle piece finally clicked where it belonged. Who? I asked. Liam opened his phone, tapped a folder, and slid it across the table. Her name is Diana. I looked at the screen. Texts, photos, timestamps. A picture of Michael at a bar with his hand on a woman's back. A selfie Diana sent him from her office. Messages like, can't stop thinking about last night. I wish you didn't have to pretend at home. Did you talk to her yet about opening things up? And the date stamps. They lined up perfectly with every moment Michael had called our marriage too restrictive, or watched podcasts about non-possessive love, or brought up evolving together. So he was rehearsing. Not for a conversation. For cover. I set the phone down and leaned back. "You're quiet," Liam said gently. "I already knew," I murmured. "Not the details. But I didn't need them." He nodded slowly. "I figured as much." "How long?" I asked. "About a month. Maybe a little more." He didn't say her name. He just talked about connection and energy like he was reading from a yoga blog. "Of course," I said. "Michael wouldn't say I'm cheating. He'd say I'm expanding." I pushed a hand through my hair, staring at the empty chair beside mine. "You okay?" Liam asked. I let out a tiny laugh, sharp, humorless. "Honestly, I'm relieved." He blinked. "Relieved?" "Yeah." I smiled a little. Now he can stop pretending that philosophy videos made him cheat. He was just looking for permission to do what he already did. Liam rubbed his jaw. "I'm sorry, Harper." "Don't be," I said. "You didn't do it." "I know, but I also know how much you gave to that marriage. You deserve better." I exhaled, slow, calm, centered. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "Most people would have stayed out of it." "I couldn't," he said. "Not when he was building a whole narrative that painted you as the problem." I raised an eyebrow. "He said that." "Not directly. But he kept saying you were holding him back, too traditional. He made it sound like you were suffocating him. And I know that's not you." "No," I said. "It wasn't." Michael simply couldn't deal with the fact that his choices were selfish, not enlightened. "Harper," Liam added quietly, "for what it's worth, you're handling this better than anyone I've ever seen. Most people would be screaming or crying by now." I shrugged. "I don't scream. I don't break things. I don't implode. I just leave." He nodded like he'd expected that answer. After dinner, Liam walked me to my truck again. He didn't touch me, didn't hover, just walked beside me, giving me space. "If you need anything," he said, "call me." "I will." "And Harper." "Yeah. Michael's going to spiral." I paused. "You think so?" He nodded. "He can dish out chaos, but he can't survive it. He's not used to anyone calling him out, especially not someone he thought he could manipulate." That made me smile. "Then he's not going to like the next few weeks." Hotel check-in, my new temporary life. That night, instead of going home, I booked a room at a small hotel across town. Nothing fancy, just clean sheets, quiet halls, and enough distance to breathe. I wasn't scared of running into Michael. I was tired of giving him the chance. I brought only a small duffel bag and my laptop. I'd pick up the rest of my things in pieces over the next week. I sat on the bed, scrolling through the evidence Liam showed me again. Not because I needed to see it, but because it felt like closing the final tab in a long, exhausting browser window. Then my phone buzzed. "Michael, where are you? Please talk to me. We can fix this." I didn't answer. "I didn't mean anything," I said. "You know I love you." Delete. "Can we meet just for 10 minutes? Block. Silence. For the first time in a long